I have recently entered city politics. How can I become a successful leader? First of all, I recommend do not, under any circumstances, seek a second term. There was a very good reason why in ancient Athens, people in government were not allowed to have a second term. Now, focus on this term and this term only. You do not want to focus on being re-elected, because then you will do what others want you to do, and you will not be able to bring your ideas forward. This is the biggest mistake politicians make. I was going to say many politicians, but I think it's all of them. They try and become career politicians. This is not your job. And they find excuses like, I have to finish what I started. You do not have to finish what you started. Your job is not to change people's lives. Your job is to simply show them another way as well, or one more way. And you do not need more than 3 or 4 or 5 years for this. So this is very important. Forget about a second term. And don't worry about what you're going to do next. If you do, I want to say a good job, but good is not the right word. If you are successful at your job, you will be called by other mayors later, by other cities, for advice. So don't think of lack. That's another mistake politicians make. They have believed that there is lack, that there is not enough, and I have to make sure I have enough for me. And they make dirty deals with big business simply because it's not so much that they are dirty or they are evil, these politicians. They have simply believed there isn't enough. And they are trying to secure something for the future. If you want to be successful, you will need to let go of this. Don't worry, you won't die in the future. We don't live in that world anymore. So yes, do not believe in lack. Another thing, let go of the belief in creating a perfect city, a perfect society. Perfection is mind-numbingly boring. Just move to Scandinavia and see for yourself. If something is perfect, it stops growing. And this is not what cities are about. Cities are about constant growth. We don't mean growth as in only spreading out as far as the eye could see. They are about constant change. And change does bring growth. So it will help you to convince your citizens to stop looking for utopia in their city, and to help them understand that cities are always in transition. And once they stop being in transition, they start dying. We have seen this in many European cities. If you can convince your citizens of this, it will be easier for you to keep your city more alive. Cities are about noise. Cities are about ongoing work. Cities are about things not being perfect. Because all these things represent life. There are many cities that I've lived in that reached the level where they stopped growing. They are still beautiful cities, but they have become extremely expensive because they stopped growing. And in the majority of cases, not all, but in the majority of cases, it's the older people that have money and that can afford to move to those cities. And older people prefer their quiet. But then the whole city becomes sleepy. I'm going to mention which city it is. It's San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco for 12 years. When I first moved there, it was exciting. It had many problems. Then the dot-com era started. It became rich. It became older. It became whiter. And now it's just a beautiful, sleepy city. You don't want this for your city. So convince your citizens about the role of the city. By the way, I'm saying convince your citizens, but do keep another thing in mind. No matter how good your ideas, your way is not the only way. Because sometimes we have very good ideas, we know they can work, but others cannot see them. So if you keep this in mind that, yes, you're right, but your way is not the only way. Cities are about many ways working together. Not together, working individually. But they do have some things in common, and the city keeps them there. Another thing you could do is sit down somewhere quietly, all by yourself, and call the energy of the city. Every city is an entity. Every city has a soul, just like every human. And just like every human, the soul of the city is only interested in growth. Keep this in mind. Never stop growing. The city does not want this. Again, this does not mean expanding out and building these mindless suburbs. It does not mean that. Change. Focus on change. Allow change. This is growth. You are where you are right now because you have had many careers. You've had many jobs. You've had many ups and many downs. You have grown, and now you have become a mayor of a city. This does not mean that every mayor of a city has your experience, but the majority of them do. The city is the same way. It wants many experiences. It wants constant change. Keep this in mind and try and convey this message to your citizens. Then they might not agree, but they will have an understanding. They won't feel like you are going against them. You can say something like, we all live here, and I will listen to all of you. But, I don't want to say what the but is, because for every person it is different. So you can put your but there. In my case, I would have put, I will listen to all of you, but I do have the final decision for the next 4 years. And after that, I promise you I will leave, and you can go back to normal. So yes, I didn't finish this. Call the energy of the city and ask this energy, what can I do for you? And stay in this feeling for a moment, or many moments actually. See if you can stay in this feeling a good 5-10 minutes. the city, the energy of the city, the soul of the city will connect with you and will keep guiding you to what it needs or what it wants. I'm going to repeat this because this is where most mayors go wrong. They stop growing. They think the mission of the city is to be perfect, but it isn't. There are many perfect cities around the world, like the ones selected every year by The Economist, this magazine. Those are beautiful cities. The one that has been selected best city in the world to live in 4 years in a row, Melbourne, Australia, is actually my hometown. I grew up in Melbourne. I love Melbourne. And then one day in my 20s, I decided to go to Europe for a holiday. This was exactly 30 years ago, and I never went back to Melbourne. I still tell everybody it's beautiful, it's a nice place to live. But you see, when I saw the chaos of the European and the American cities, I felt alive. So yes, Melbourne, Vancouver, Vienna, Sydney, perfect cities. But I do not choose to live there. Also, keep this in mind. In recent years, there has been a new class of people. They have money, not ridiculous amounts of money, but enough money to live anywhere they want. Because the majority of these people that I'm talking about happen to be single, either not married, never married, or divorced or separated. Because they happen to be single, they prefer cities. You need to make your city attractive to this class of people. Because I know your city, I know that it is not attractive to this class of people. This class of people want good, cheap coffee and good, relatively cheap food. This is their number one priority. Weather comes second, but you have that. That's not a problem. So, focus on these people because they will move into your city in the hundreds of thousands and they bring money. The majority of these people, if not 99% of them, do not really live in the system. They can work online, or they have enough money where they no longer need to work and they focus on other things. They are not in the system. They do not like over-regulation and they do not like bureaucracy. And this class of people is growing every single day. So try and make your city attractive to these people. They don't care about traffic because most of them do not have cars. They live in the center. They walk everywhere. They do like relatively cheap apartments. These people are not about showing off. They will not go to the best suburbs and get the most expensive penthouse. These people live for themselves. They find each other. They talk with each other. But they don't play the game of he who ends up with the most toys in the end wins. They're not really interested in toys. They do like food, but not expensive. One city that has catered to these people is Berlin, and it has become very successful. There are others as well. Now, how can I become a successful leader? Make sure that your city has what is called upward mobility. Make sure that if people work a little extra, they can move up, meaning they can get a better apartment. Make sure the prices of apartments are not too high. Make sure the taxes are not high so that the prices won't have to go high, because then you're going to lose out. You're going to lose out from letting fresh money come in. A city becomes richer if fresh money keeps coming in. If you stop fresh money from coming in, and then you only have your money, you try and save that so it won't go out. And again, you stop the city from growing. What else could make you a good leader? Again, I'm going to go back to do not become a career politician, because that will not make you a successful leader. It will simply make you a career politician. Do what you're going to do for 3 or 4 or 5 years. I don't know how many years you're a mayor for. And then keep moving on. You will have a good experience and you can advise others after this. Try and convince your citizens, yes. Try and convince your citizens that life is not just about getting into the comfort zone and then staying there until you die. Or try and convince them that this is not what a city's job is. If you would like this, you could move to one of the outer suburbs of the city or into the countryside. Because you see, too many of us make a little bit of money, become comfortable, and then we get a nice apartment, and then we don't want anything going on around the apartment because we have noise or we have too many people. But these people will need to move out, because this is not what a city is about. Talk to them. Let them know that if we stop growing, we will eventually die. We will have quiet streets, but if we're dead, who cares? If no one wants to come to live in our city because it lacks growth, in other words, it lacks excitement. Excitement, enthusiasm, always comes with growth. Again, do not confuse this with becoming Los Angeles. That's a whole different story. Or Houston. But you do need constant change. Tell people that if they're looking for quiet, do not buy an apartment in the city. Because you see, these people want the conveniences of a city, but they don't want the noise of a city. Well, I'm sorry, we can't have it both ways. Another thing that will help with cities, some mayors focus a lot on not having what is called vice in the city, drugs, prostitution. This sounds nice for those same boring people that want a quiet city. But you see, drugs and prostitution have been a part of human nature for thousands and thousands of years. And these people try and go against human nature. So then you're wasting so many resources trying to police or curtail drugs and prostitution. And this is also not going to make you a successful leader. It's going to make you a dictator. A city is not a city without drugs and prostitution. This is why we go to cities, to be able to do these things. So instead of policing it, try and focus on making it a little healthier for the people that are in this business. And tell your citizens that these people also live here. And we need to listen to everybody's needs. And hopefully that way they won't be against you too much. It will also help to make your citizens understand that these days cities have very little to do with a nationality, very little to do with the country they are in. We have heard this phrase before. Cities have more in common with each other than with the country they are in. Because all big cities are now international cities. Try and explain to your citizens that you want an international city, not a national city. And this way they won't be upset with the influx of immigrants that your city is having at the moment. Also, the majority of these immigrants are young and hungry for work. This is what we call cheap labor. You can use this to your benefit. Now, do not confuse this with slave labor. That's two different things. Because many people say we should not have cheap labor, everybody should have rights and be comfortable. Yes, 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 yes. But our cities and our nations were not built on comfort. They were built by cheap labor. So, since your city has so many young, hungry immigrants coming in, ready to work for anything, use it. What else? Oh yes, do not compete with other cities. Because when you start competing with other cities, you miss out on what your city has to offer that others do not. Every city is different, just like every person is different. And because of geography, every city has something different to offer. Focus on those things. Sit down and ask yourself, what does my city have to offer that others do not? And try and enhance those things. I don't want to mention what your city has because I don't want to mention your city at the moment. Let's see if there's anything else. How can I become a successful leader? Every time I ask this question, dude, what I get is, do not seek a second term. You will ruin it. Because you will be focused on the second term. You will not be focused on this one. You will be focused on winning a second term. Do not even run for re-election. Do what you want to do now. And that's it, then move on. Most politicians, this is not only for city politicians, also for government, the country's prime ministers and presidents. There have been many politicians that have done a great job at taking their country out of poverty, but then they like the attention, they like the power, and they don't move on. And their energy has moved on, and they stay behind. And then they have to fight to stay there. Do not do this, and you will be a very successful leader.